This episode is sponsored by Archaeological Tours. Want to dig deeper into Mexico's indigenous past and present? Allow Archaeological Tours to customize your Yucatán adventure. Archaeological works hand in hand with local indigenous guides to provide a tour that is entertaining, educational, and beneficial to the local community. For an adventure like no other, check out archaeogato.com. That's ARKEOGATO.com. Or just follow the link in the show notes. Now, on with the show.
You must excuse me. I've grown quite weary.
This hasn't been easy, I know. But you've learned a lesson. A lesson in honesty. Honesty to yourself and honesty to others. That lesson will stand you in good stead all your life.
I think we've all learned a good lesson. I've always heard that honesty is the best policy. Now I'm catching on to why that's so, and 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 why that's so.
Greetings, dear listeners, and welcome to Tales from Atlantis, where we explore the fascinating worlds of Chicano, Mexicano, and Mesoamerican history and archaeology, while also challenging the myths and misinformation that surround them. We are your hosts, Curly Tlapoyawa.
And Ruben Ariano Tlacatecat.
So what's going on, Dr. Tlacatecat? How are you today?
Not too shabby, you know. It's the end of the year, the end of the Gregorian calendar, the European New Year.
Enjoying your time off from the university.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. It's it's like you said before. Nothing's going to stop me from having a good time with my family, even if it's a Western holiday or a colonizer holiday. It's time off with the family, and so that's what counts.
Yeah.
Right. And, it's interesting because we tend to do a symposium every year here in Dallas with the Calpulli. And this year, one of the things that we discussed was for the new, members of the danza group and the Calpulli in general who haven't been around for a very long time. We kind of like to go over some of the history of the group besides, other things that relate to danza and the tradición. And so this year, one of the things that we discussed was how back when we started in doing danza and doing the tradición and going to medicine meetings, and we met the huicholes, one of the things that we started doing, because it was a manda, it was like this thing that the huicholes had us doing. They were like, for 5 years, you have to go do a ceremony with us in Wirikuta. But the catch was that it was on New Year's Eve. And so for 5 years straight, some of us spent our New Year's down in Wirikuta. And if you've ever been to Wirikuta, it gets cold in the winter, especially at night, because you're out in the desert. And we were just kind of thinking back at how crazy that was back in the day. Like, you want us to go do ceremony for New Year's and be away from our family? Oh, for 5 years? That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
That's commitment.
Commitment, I'll tell you.
Sheesh. Well, speaking of time and time systems and New Year's in particular, I wanted to give a little plug here because I just got from the printer the latest calendars, a Mexican count of days, the Mexica Aztec calendar for the year Se Tochtli 2026 to 2027. This is the annual calendar that I co-publish every year with Ruben Ochoa, who did the work as far as the correlation goes, and I put it all together in a cool full color.
Good one.
Tocayo. And a lot of people confuse you guys for each other when they talk to me.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, so Ruben, when is he going to talk about the calendar on the show?" And I'm like, "Well, that's a different Ruben." So, spoiler alert: 2 different individuals.
Mm-hmm.
One lives in Compton, the other lives in Dallas.
But you know what? There can only be one.
Fight. But if anybody out there wants to order one of the calendars, yeah, you could get it from Amazon if you so choose, or you could go to shopastlantis.com and order it straight from the source. I'll even sign it for you, and I'll throw in like a free sticker or something while supplies last. So, yeah, I'm excited. It came out really well, and
nice.
I always stress out as the new year draws, because the new year's in March.
Right.
As the new year draws closer, I always start feeling a little stressed, like, oh, shit, I got to get this calendar done.
Got to get it out.
Got to get it made. So with that small plug out of the way, I would like to get into today's episode that we are calling The Invention of America. So today we're peeling back the layers of a name we use every single day, often without a second thought. America.
America.
But we aren't just looking at a map. We're looking at a philosophical crisis. It's a crisis that came to a head in 1958. That was the year Edmundo O'Gorman, one of Mexico's most brilliant modern historians, published a book that sent shockwaves through the academic world.
Absolutely. And I should say his name is O'Gorman, not O'Gorman. He was Mexican. So that's he was born I think he was born in Mexico too. His father happened to be what is the O? Is that Scottish? What is that?
Scottish or Irish?
Irish, yeah. So the book that he published in 1958 was called La Invención de América, Investigación acerba de la estructura histórica del Nuevo Mundo y del sentido de su devenir. Man, that's a long time.
That's a mouthful.
I'm not even going to try to translate
Edmundo
that.
could have used an editor.
Right. But it was a very influential book, and it was translated into English a few years after it was published, and then eventually it went through several editions and countless translations. You can find it in French and all kinds of different languages. So, needless to say, it is a kind of staple, one of those books that anyone who's interested in how the so-called New World was constructed in the European mind should probably read.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember you telling me that you did not find this in a classroom, though.
That's right. No, I mean, I found it by accident while, scanning the history shelves of a used bookstore when I was in Houston. This was maybe 20-something years ago, back when I was a part-time community college student. And, back then I was just starting what turned out to be a very long academic career. And, at that stage, I was like 5 years deep into the tradición, doing danza azteca, and then deep into Mexicayot. And O'Gorman's book really struck a chord because as a natural contrarian that I happen to be, as I've been told, I don't know, his work played right into a major tenet of Mexicayot, which was the rejection of Eurocentric history and thinking.
Yeah, so you used him as ammunition.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Whenever we discuss the falsehood or the falsity of the name America, I'd pull him out, O'Gorman, to argue for indigenous names like Turtle Island, Abya, Yala. I think that's how you say that. The South American, or is it Peruvian? I forget exactly. I think it's in the Quechua or Quichua language. And then, of course, Ixachilan, which is the supposed Mexicayot or Mexica name for the Western Hemisphere. And so O'Gorman's argument was something that was elegant and simple. He argued that Columbus didn't discover America, that it was invented by Europeans, and so again, this is kind of a philosophical framework. He challenged the very word discover itself, So, for example, O'Gorman would state things like,
discovery implies that the nature of the thing found was previously known to the finder. i.e., that he knows that objects such as the one he has found can and do exist, although the existence of that particular one was wholly unknown.
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of Tales from Ostlantis is brought to you by Ostlantis Premium. Don't you just hate having your favorite podcast interrupted by ads like this? Well, dear listener, you're in luck. Because starting at just $3 a month, you can support independent Chicano media and receive ad-free episodes, premium episodes, bonus content, and access to our Discord server. Just visit talesfromostlantis.com and click Go Premium, or follow the link in the show notes. And now, on with the show.
So think about that for a second. O'Gorman wondered how you could discover something without having prior knowledge of what that thing even was. So, he used astronomy as an example, explaining that.
Thus, an astronomer who is already aware that some heavenly bodies are classed as planets may be said to have discovered it. But the astronomer who first has the conception of such bodies as planets may properly be said to have invented them.
Right. So, invention. I mean, he's targeting the idea of discovery and invention. And so he's saying that Europe didn't find a continent, that they invented a concept of one. They populated this invention with their own fanciful ideas, such as strange creatures. And you've probably seen these maps where you see like faces on the bodies of humans in the chest, instead of having a head. So that kind of stuff, right? Amazonian women, which is kind of where the name for California comes from, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It's kind of associated to that. And then the Garden of Eden, right? So the framework is a cornerstone for scholars of colonialism today. His work has been used by many preeminent scholars of coloniality and such. But it has also opened a door for a much wilder theory, the idea that the name America itself isn't even European.
The Americo Vespucci myth. Like that.
Good one. So most of us grew up being told that the continents were named after Amerigo Vespucci. It's one of those facts so entrenched that almost no one really questions it except for a select few. Mm-hmm. You have people who are nationalists, like from the Hispanosphere, some anti-German Europeans, for instance, because of Waldseemüller, the mapmaker, and more radical thinker people among indigenous-centric circles also tend to believe in this idea. And so I wanted to also be one of those believers, back then, that they were right, that what they were telling me was right, because I wanted to believe that the knowledge that I was being taught in the tradición was ancient and factual. I mean, you can relate to this, right, Curly?
Absolutely. But, you start to feel like you were being indoctrinated, maybe?
Absolutely. No offense. But honestly, yes, my teachers were just parroting information that they had heard before. They called it ancient knowledge. But as I became a more serious student of history, I realized I couldn't just take it on faith. I decided to stop being an apologist for the charlatans and the Mexica communities. And I realized that age and sincerity, as we've mentioned before in this podcast, don't equate to infallibility. Simply being an old person doesn't mean that you are an elder who holds factual knowledge. I can't stress that enough. I started looking into what I call the American toponym hypothesis. I know that's a mouthful, so we're going to shorten it to ATH, but toponym refers to the name itself. And the hypothesis is this is kind of my own pet theory that I have, that I've given to this idea, right? So this is a critical framework that questions the notion that America comes from an indigenous name in South America, because that's the proposition here. And so the problem here is that no one can agree on which name and which sources that I might add are often non-existent.
Interesting.
To use for this, right? I mean, we've talked about this before. So for instance, let's look at Jack D. Forbes, who was a huge figure in Chicano indigenous studies and one of at least my intellectual heroes from the indigenous community. I'm sure that you as well, Curly. I don't want to speak for you.
Same here.
But I know that we've cited him before a lot. And when I found this out about him, I was really kind of disappointed, to say the least. This is something that he wrote, for instance, in 1995 in regards to the ATH.
Some people believe that America, as a name, stems from the mountain range known as Amerique, located in Nicaragua. Others believe that it stems from a word common to several American languages of the Caribbean and South America, namely maraca, pronounced maraca, maraca, and baraca. This word, meaning rattle or gourd, is found as a place name in Venezuela, Maracapana, Maracay, Maracaibo, Trinidad, Maracas, Puerto Rico, Maracayu, etc., Brazil, Maraca, Itamaraca, and elsewhere. Many very early maps of the Caribbean region show an island located to the northwest of Venezuela, where Nicaragua is actually located, called Tamaraque, which has been interpreted as T. Amaraque, standing for tierra or terra, which is land, terra, of Amaraque. All of this is before America first appeared as a name on the mainland, roughly in the area of Venezuela. Most of us have probably been taught that America as a name is derived from that of Amerigo Vespucci, a notorious liar and enslaver of native people. Strangely enough, Vespucci's first name is more often recorded as Alberico rather than Americo. It may well be that the name America is not derived from his name, but we know for sure that it was first applied to South America or Central America and not to the area of the United States.
Oh, Forbes. So, Jack D. Forbes, he was very influential in the community. His ideas spread through the Mexica, circles and calpulis like wildfire. I remember talking about this stuff back in the day. But long before him, there was Juan Luna Cárdenas, whom we've also talked about here on this podcast before. He was one of those post-revolutionary Mexicanists or indigenists as well, who claimed, right, that Vespucci's real name was Alberico with a B, Alberico, and that Amerigo was a later invention. So we have two claims here. First name being Alberico, second name being invented Amerigo. He gave this fascinating interview to LULAC in 1979, which I found while I was doing my doctoral dissertation, where he had been invited to UT Austin for that conference and spoke at the event. And during his talk, as he was wont to do, Luna brought up the American toponym hypothesis, or the ATH, and caught the attention of the LULAC film documentarian, who then requested an interview. And so the name of America was the first item of interest in this interview, and this was Luna's very interesting response.
And this is translated by you?
Yes.
Because it was all in Spanish, right?
Let me remember if it was originally in Spanish, because it's been a while. It's been about 15 years since I looked at this. It might have been originally in Spanish.
I think it was, because I think I found clips of it somewhere.
Yeah, I think I might have shared those with you.
Yeah, that's where I got it from.
Yeah.
Well, yes, the name America rarely appears in the books, and its origin is certainly not explained in the geographical maps, but it is attributed to a certain man named Amerigo Vespucci. In fact, there never was an Amerigo Vespucci, because his real name was Albericus Vespucci, making several trips with Christopher Columbus, specifically on his second voyage, when the region of Venezuela was seen. He asked the natives where they were from, and they replied that they were from the mountains of America, which are to the west of the country. Subsequently, he sent his relaciones, or written accounts, to Germany to a gentleman named Waldschmuller. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Waldschmuller?
Waldschmuller.
Who read the wonders of the trip. As a result, Waldschmuller chose to immortalize the surname of the cartographer and navigator, who was a very learned man, by using Americae Vespucci, with a Latin ending for America, A-E, which means of, and meant America of Vespucci. Later, people who ignored Latin took away the AE, which is the genitive ending of the first Latin translation, and changed it to an O, making it Americo. But certainly it is so that the western Venezuelan mountain region, America, was used to give the name to the entire continent, which, by the way, in the Aztec language, it being the continent, already had another name called Ixachilan, where this ethnic group traveled from the regions of Canada to the pre-Inca Andes and vice versa. From the pre-Inca Andes and Mesoamerica, they traveled north to visit the Aztec groups of North America. And I just got to say, he starts off kind of making sense.
Yeah.
And then he just goes right into the crazy shit at the very end.
Just down that cliff, huh? I mean, there's definitely so much to unpack there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the search for Amerique. So Cárdenas and Forbes. So far we've talked about mainly Cárdenas, Juan Cárdenas, and Jack D. Forbes, and they agree on three things: the names, or the name of America, comes from an indigenous mountain range. The range was or is near Venezuela, and that Vespucci's name was actually Alberico, and then later switched to Americo. I don't know. You kind of lose track after a while.
Yeah, and then when you looked for these mountains, you didn't find them in Venezuela.
Right. I mean, I looked for the mountains on maps, searched archives, and nothing. I mean, there was nothing with that name or variations. But then I turned my gaze towards Nicaragua, because Nicaragua had been one of those places that had also been mentioned. And there it was, sure enough, Las Serranías de Amerisque, which is close enough. So I assumed that that's what they were talking about. And so this is where I began to search, and we meet another individual that predates both Luna and Forbes, by the name of Thomas Belt. And he was a British geologist who wrote The Naturalist in Nicaragua. That was a publication that was published in 1874. I believe it's a book. I found an online copy of it. And so in that book, he mentioned these mountains, the Amerisque Mountains, or the Sierra de Amerisque. And he proposes that these are mountains, and he doesn't outright say it, but, because of his mention of this, a lot of proponents of the ATH hypothesis, they often point to him as someone that they can use to support their argumentation. They use him as a source. But let's look at what he actually has to say about the Serranías de Amerisque, if you don't mind.
At a short distance to the west rise the precipitous rocks of the Amerique Range, with great perpendicular cliffs and huge isolated rocks and pinnacles. The name of this range gives us a clue to the race of the ancient inhabitants. In the highlands of Honduras, the termination of tique or rique is of frequent occurrence in the names of places, as Chaparristique, Leparterique, Yotique, Ajuterique, and others. The race that inhabited this region were the Lenca Indians, often mentioned in the accounts given by the missionaries of their early expeditions into Honduras. I think that the Lenca Indians were the ancient inhabitants of Chontales, that they were the Chontals of the Nahuas, or Aztecs of the Pacific side of the country.
Do you know anything about that?
No, This is all new to me,
Yeah,
man. This is
yeah, me
wild.
too. I think we need to dig into that. I wonder what he's referring to here.
Yeah.
But, to be clear, Belt wasn't saying that America came from these mountains. He was just doing linguistics on the Lenca people. It was another gentleman, Jules Marcou, a Swiss geologist, and Marcou is spelled Marcou, who took Belt's work a year later and made that leap. He made that jump. So he argued that when Columbus asked where the gold came from, the locals said Amerisque. He even wrote a whole book in 1888. The following points are what really stand out from his work.
Point 1. Amerique is the Indian name of some existing mountains. In the Mayan language, this means land of wind, or country where the wind always blows. Point 2. Vespucci's name is Alberico in Italian and Spanish, and Albericus in Latin. Point 3. Never has a name suffered so many variations and combinations, some intentional and others unconsciously, like that of Vespucci's, Americus, Amerigo, Amerigo, etc. And point 4. Before 1507, the date of publication of the name Americus by Jean Basson,
I think it's Jean Basson.
Saint Dié. Yeah, I don't speak French. Is this French?
Yeah, it is.
By Jean Basson.
Vous parlez français, monsieur?
Saint-Dié. This name does not appear in any printed document or manuscript of recognizable and undisputed.
Yeah, it's very weird.
That is weird.
Marco was convinced that Alexander von Humboldt made a mistake by giving Waldseemüller too much credit. He thought Europeans associated Amerique with gold and that the name had just stuck. It's a compelling story, but is it true?
Dum dum dum. The ghost of Humboldt.
Humboldt always has to make an appearance in these talks, right?
Humboldt's always got to fucking pop up somewhere.
Pinche Humboldt. So while Marcou was looking at Nicaragua, Thomas H. de Lambert, here's another French guy. Let me see if I get it right. Thomas H. de Lambert de Saint-Brie was looking at Venezuela. In 1888, he published a book the same year as Marcou, claiming that the name came from Amaraca Pana. Saint-Brie, and Brie is spelled B-R-I-S. Saint-Brie tried to use the Popol Vuh to prove his point. He told the story about the hero twins and the place called Amarca.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Have you picked up your Mexica calendar for the year 12 Flint? Or how about a paperback copy of the Four Disagreements? Just visit talesfromatlantis.com for all the latest merchandise and show some love for your favorite podcast. That's talesfromatlantis.com for all the latest merchandise. Now, back to the show. Ishkik returns home and goes to the mother of Hunun Ahpu, by whom she is received as a daughter-in-law, remaining there until the birth of the twins, Hunahpu and Shpalenka. Shpalenka? God damn, I cannot speak Maya. Hunahpu and Shpalenka, who go to Xibalba and perform many wonders, killing and restoring themselves to life. The kings of Xibalba command that they repeat this with them, whereon they kill their majesties, but do not restore them. Then they tell the people that they are the sons of one of the heroes executed by these kings, and that they have thus avenged their father. They then retire to Utlatlan, the seat of the common people, declare war, defeat Xibalba, and form an empire, making Utlatlan the capital, but changing its name to Amarca before doing so. The old Spaniards wrote this name Gumarca.
Interesting story.
Gumarca.
As the kids say, cool story, bro. The problem is that the story isn't in the Popol Vuh at all. Amarga is likely just a shortened version of Cundinamarca in Colombia. But St. Brie doubled down, trying to break the word into syllabic roots such as am-ar-ka. Am-arca.
God damn. That takes a lot of balls to make up an entire quote and then cite a book. And you just made it all up.
The gall.
Interesting. So to quote, to find the origin of the name America, its construction must be examined. The history and language of Peru points out unmistakably that the root R, that is AR, in its primary or in its secondary form, is the chief in the name of America. Therefore, it appears to be formed of three roots: Ar, Ka, or Eri, Ka, which language explains in the following way. Am is a universal root meaning great, which is found in many American names, as in Amagansett, Amatitlan, Amarucancha, etc. Ar meant the sun, which was universally the chief emblem of God, the Great Spirit. In Quechua, Pac is for Pacarin, it dawns, ER on high, Pac-ari, or Hu Aui, morning. Wa is Lord. God, this sounds like shit that you see on TikTok. Like straight up.
TikTok slop.
Wa is, yeah, man. This guy was ahead of his time. Hua is Lord, or old or ancient. Ial Arin, light of the sun. The Incas were called children of the sun and claimed descent from the Aymar race, while the names of the first four brothers and governors of Amarca began with Ayer, A-Y-E-R. Hu Yara was their alias, and Huiracocha, their chief god. Is that supposed to be Viracocha?
Yeah.
Was their chief god. Or Wa, Lord, Ira, sun, Cocha, water. The sun rising from the water, hence the dawn. Arica was their chief seaport, and it may be that Peru means Eru. God damn it. This is exactly like those fucking TikTok videos where somebody's trying to break down a bullshit made up Nahuatl word.
Right. But maybe this
for the dictionaries. All attention to the fact that the Peruvians were very fond of adding the letter P to words. Like all of this was just so that he could get to. So Peruvians were very fond of adding the letter P to words, you know.
Yeah. I swear. My head spins every time I go back and look at St. Breeze and that word salad that you just read. You know, it's very impressive how much of he reaches here, right, to try to make it work. It reminds me a lot of like the sort of jungle gym explanations that we get from our old pal Domingo Paredes in his old book, Un Continente y una Cultura. I mean, he kind of does the same thing there with the Mayan language. I mean, Cundinamarca likely just means condor's nest, right, if I'm not mistaken. And Peru comes from a local ruler who was named Biru with a B. And so over time, B and P, they kind of get interchanged, right? And so St. Brie is just guessing and then tries to rope in Humboldt again. He can't help but rope in Humboldt. He's got to bring him back in.
The point of land, so like an isle, and now known as Maracaibo, was no doubt part of Amaracapana, mentioned by Humboldt. And it is a curious illustration of these early errors to find it called by Ojeda the Isle province and lake of Kokivakoa.
Yeah. Right.
Which the crown appointed him governor of, though existing only in his imagination. But they soon found out their mistake, for the name Koki meant Chibchi, the Chibchi royal race of the kingdom of Kundin Amaraka. Chibchi was the name of the people and not their country, and altered it to Maracaibo, which, like Maracapana, meant Amaraka, or America.
America.
Good Lord.
Wow. Honestly, we need a linguist to come in here and parse this crap out. But, here's the big but. Here's the mic drop. This is my mic drop moment. The Humboldt text, St. Brie cites the Relación Historiques, Volume 2, page 462. That's an actual citation in St. Brie. Does not exist. People, listeners.
Shocking.
Does not exist. I mean, I search for this everywhere, and I could be wrong. I mean, I've been known to be wrong. But it's likely a phantom source, as we like to call them. This is something that is frequent. It's an ongoing problem that we encounter with work that is usually penned by pseudo-scholars who pretend like they know what the hell they're talking about. Curly.
And phantom source is a very nice way of putting it.
Right. I mean, what would you describe it as besides phantom source?
Bullshit.
It's a bullshit source. Yeah, I like mine.
Bullshit source, buddy.
Too. I mean, both are equally valid. You can use one in one context.
Phantom source sounds way more professional and prestigious.
Oh, okay, that's what it is. All right.
The homonymic fallacy. So we have a bunch of scholars in the late 1800s, Belt, Marceau, St. Brie, all echoing each other, but none of them offering anything concrete. And this happens a lot with pseudo-scholars, right? They just repeat each other and cite each other, and it's just like this circle of fucking nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, this persists. You even found it in the 2001 handbook on the Aztec calendar. I have that.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we talked about this before. Honestly, if I'm not mistaken, this is originally from a blog post, the script here. And when I first wrote that thing, it was prompted by me finding that in that book. I was like, what the hell is this, right? And so
I remember.
This is where we get to the core of this issue of the homonymic fallacy. I know that sounds so mouthful.
Yeah, it is about. So can you break that down? Explain what that means, sir?
So a homonymic fallacy is when you assume that two words are related just because they sound similar and are spelled similarly, even if they come from completely different times and places. My fellow Mexica, and you've encountered this before, they do this all the time. They say things like, Atlantis must be related to Aztlan. And sure, we have this podcast called Atlantis, but it's a play on that idea. It's a play on words. Our followers, I believe, they know that we do this in jest. Hopefully, right? Most people that listen to us, they understand that. But
I think we get some people who think we're being serious, though, and then they listen to the show and they're like, "What? Fuck these guys."
That's crazy. That's crazy talk, man. So the issue, if I may, sir, is that many in Mexicayot and the danza tradition believe this stuff as fact. They hear it, they've heard it, someone said it. It must be true. I found it in, blah, 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 blah. Such and such person said it. And so, for instance, we've discussed this before as well. There are people within the Tradición en Mexicayot and the danza community who say that Seattle, right, the city which is named after the old chief Seattle, that they claim that this is an actual Nahuatl word, se-atl, se meaning one and atl meaning water, one water. What does that even mean, one water? Up in Seattle, is there like a place that's got only one thing of water? I don't get it. Like, why would they
the way they
call
try to explain it, though,
place
right,
Seattle?
is like se-atl, one water, and it's called that because of the abundance of water. Go to Seattle. It's always raining. Coincidence?
It's just one stream of constant flow of water coming down from the sky. Or my other favorite one, I don't know if you've heard this one before, but they'll say that Nacogdoches, which is here in Texas, a little big town called Nacogdoches, that it comes from Nacatochtli, which is Nahuatl for rabbit meat. There's a bunch of rabbit meat over there. Let's call it Nacogdoches.
Oh my God.
I don't know. Ridiculous.
Well, it sounds plausible if you want it to be true.
Right? I mean, and that's the trap. It's the truthiness of it, right? That there is some truth behind what's being said, but there really is no conclusive proof, for instance, that America comes from the Amerisque Mountains or Amaraca. I mean, it's a beautiful idea that helps people feel like they've reclaimed the land from the colonizers, but it's not history, folks. It's a fallacy.
Mm-hmm. So if the name is an invention, as O'Gorman
There you go.
said,
O'Gorman.
O'Gorman, we have to grapple with that invention rather than trying to find a secret indigenous out.
Exactly. We must be honest with ourselves, like what we try to do in this episode, in this podcast, and not only to ourselves, but to others, especially to the newcomers in the Tradición who are eager to learn about this. We can't build a future on a foundation of homonymic mistakes. That can't be the case, man.
Yeah. It's a heavy note to end on, but a necessary one. So there's two things I think that help people believe these things. Like they make them sound more believable to certain people. And the first thing is that they're hearing it from like respected elders or leaders and it,
Right.
depending on how you twist it, you could make it sound plausible, right? Nacogdoches, Nacatochtli. If it's coming from somebody you respect and you're totally new to this and you haven't questioned things before and you've been taught, no, this is your elder, this is who you listen to, and then you're more likely to believe that. The other thing I think that reinforces this tendency to believe claims like this is that you do have actual Nahuatl names in the United States to certain places. So you could point to Anahuac, Texas, right?
There you go.
Which
that
the people there call Anahuac.
Anahuac.
But
weren't you telling me a long time ago that when you first encountered that place that you wanted to, like, did you go there or something, or you researched
I wanted
it
to.
And people were saying nobody knows where the name comes from? And like, oh my god.
Yeah, I looked into it. So I researched it.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, and that was like the prominent thing online is they were talking to people from the town and they're like, yeah, nobody knows. There's all these different ideas, but nobody knows for sure. I'm like, really? Because it's an actual word. Right. Or then you get places like there's this mountain, and it's called like Mount Teocalli or Mount Teocal, and I forget where it is. It's somewhere in the Southwest, but people were pointing to this as like evidence of like, oh, why would this be called Mount Teocalli if the Mexica weren't already up in the southwestern United States? And the truth of it was soldiers who had fought in the Mexican-American War, after the United States took the northern portion of Mexico, they had to send out all of these survey crews to check out the new land. And some of the people they sent out were former military who had fought in the Mexican-American War. And if you look at this mountain, it looks kind of like a teocalli, like the shape of it. And so the guy just named it that. And he was like, oh shit, that looks like a teocalli, which is what they call their temples. And so I'm going to name it Mount Teocalli. So that's like an interesting origin. And it's way more interesting than just making shit up. Like, yes, it's called this because, of this ancient connection. Or like here in New Mexico, we have Mount Chalchihuitl. And if you know, Chalchihuitl is turquoise. And this is a mountain up by Santa Fe where there are turquoise mines. And I don't know exactly when it got this name, but it stands to reason that probably some of the Nahuatl-speaking Mesoamericans who came up with the Spanish had something to do with naming it. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not saying I do know, but that's my hypothesis. So what I'm saying is, long story short, it's a very roundabout way to make my point, but there are reasons why people can glom on to these ideas, right?
Right.
Like if I took Mount Chalchihuitl and I just started telling people, oh yeah, it was named that because of an ancient turquoise trade route that existed between the ancestral Puebloans and the people from central Mexico. And when the Pochtecas came up here, they named this mountain Chalchihuitl. I guarantee you somebody would believe me.
Right. Because it's possible.
Even though I just made that up. By the way, I just made that up.
The name is right there. It's in Nahuatl. So it has a kernel of truth to it. Like most misinformation or disinformation or fake news, whatever you want to call it, there's always, or a conspiracy theory. The reason why they resonate with people is because it taps into something that they already kind of believe in, and there's a kernel of truth to it. And it's also confirmation bias plays into this as well. If you want to believe, right, that there's an ancient connection between the Mexica or the Azteca in central Mexico to that specific area, and you find a mountain that you have no reason to know or believe that it was named after the fact, after colonization, after the U.S.-Mexican War, then you're going to assume it's always been called Mount Chalchihuitl and that it dates back to some time and place when the Mexica Aztec were there or what have you, right? So it's kind of hard. I mean, in a sense, I'm not trying to beat down on people who believe on this stuff because they've been misinformed. It's not their fault. But at the same time, like, our goal here is to expose these things so that people do know where these things come from, and so they can have a better understanding and hopefully start making better choices and maybe not believe a lot of the nonsense that comes up online. I mean, one of the reasons why this episode we're doing here in this year of 2025 and into 2026 is because there was a recent conversation in the Discord channel, and oftentimes some of the shows that we do are sort of prompted by those discussions that we had, and there's been discussion of people who are, like you were saying, on TikTok and the social medias, who are saying a bunch of nonsense. And so it's like, hey, wait a minute, I wrote about that some years ago. Hey, why don't we turn that into an episode so we can try to maybe inform more people about this? I didn't realize that people were still debating the name of America. Otherwise, I would have suggested this topic a long time ago. But here we are,
Well, and this thing is, stuff like this, I think, repeats itself. Yeah. So even though we think something is like, okay, that's been addressed, we don't have to deal with this anymore.
Right.
Social media being the way it is, all it takes is for one person. Oh, wow. Like they hear it for the first time. And so they make a video about it. And now they've infected the minds of like all of their followers, and people are sharing it.
That's why I just stay away, man. That's why I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with the socials.
It's probably a good policy.
What's the other good policy that we have here?
It's about the truth, sir.
Yeah?
Yep.
What about that truth?
Well, my friend, the truth, it's like medicine. It doesn't always taste good, but it is always good for you.
Happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year's. Demoitase.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to Tales from Atlantis, a project of the Chimali Institute of Mesoamerican Arts. If you enjoy the show, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can do this by visiting talesfromatlantis.com and clicking Support the Podcast. Your continued support will help keep the podcast ad-free and independent. Until next time, Timo Itase.